Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to SOFREP Radio. SOFREP Radio on time, on target. I'm your host this afternoon, Steve Balestrieri. Our special guest this afternoon needs no introduction to our SOFREP community. We all know him, and we've all read all of his stuff. He actually did some Facebook Live stuff years ago as part of SOFREP, but George Hand is joining us. Uh, George just wrote, and we have it right here, Brothers of the Cloth. It's actually backwards on camera, but he just wrote this book. We're going to discuss that. But before we do that, George, Geo, welcome back to SOFREP. We've missed you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate the invite.
It's good to see you. I mean, we've all missed you around here. And I have to jump right in and ask you a quick question. I had Pete Blaber on not too long ago, who you work for in the Special Mission Unit. He was telling us about your affinity and ability with foreign languages. And is that something you picked up as a youngster? Or was it just something you were born with? Or?
Yeah, as a youngster, the affinity I recognized as a youngster, but I was so young that I had no resources at all, nothing to help me learn, no books, no cassette tapes, no people to help me. So I didn't start really learning until once I got into the military. Then there's a lot of resources available to you in the military, Flamrix and DLI materials, that sort of thing. It was all non-cost, so I could just go get it, and that's what I did. But I took Spanish in high school, and that was almost worthless. But I took it, and I kept on it on my own once this class was over.
Yeah, same here. I took Spanish in high school. I took French in high school, and it wasn't the best of learning experiences there. And it was funny, after it being in the military, I went to defense language school, and for Spanish, going to 7th group, and I think I learned more in a week in DLI than I did through a couple of years of high school. Now one of the languages you speak is Chinese. How difficult is that a language for?
It's category 4.
Yeah.
So it's one of the hardest, and I think in that same category, I believe Arabic lies in that category. But yeah, I mean, it's actually the Chinese that captured my interest as a kid. The first time I saw some writing across the screen in Chinese, I just kind of was dumbfounded. That means something,
Yeah.
And then I tried making up my own language. It was real basic, kind of stupid. I just substituted English letters for diagrams that I made up. They're just all made up, and they're needlessly complicated. And basically, it had about the same power as a Captain Crunch code ring. You couldn't just sit there and slam out notes in this. You kind of had to draw every single one of them.
Yeah, it's funny, with Chinese people, how their language is so different. When we were in Panama after the war was over down there, a bunch of Chinese immigrants had moved in, and it was amazing how fast they picked up the Spanish language, and they sat there, and it was like within 2 or 3 months they were fluent, where they could carry on a long conversation in Spanish. And they tried, I would say, ineptly to teach me and my partner Chinese, and never did catch on to it. So hats off to you, bro.
Oh, thanks. It's just, you know, like most languages, they're all audio, you can listen to them, and that's pretty much all you need. But with Chinese, for me, it's visual as well. And sometimes I had to picture, what I had to see it written before I could understand it, or picture it in my head before I can understand it. And the Chinese uses a different part of the brain than English and the Latin languages. So
Interesting.
that's probably why it's so damn hard.
Yeah.
It's processed in a different section of the brain.
Well, let's talk about your career a little bit. I know, you started off in the conventional army.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and then moved on to SF um, and then the special mission unit. Inform our listeners, if in case they're not aware of your background, a little bit about that.
Yeah, I came in as mechanized infantry, and didn't enjoy that at all. When my enlistment was up, it was only a 2-year enlistment back then. It was an option. I took just the 2 years, the shortest amount of time possible, in case I didn't like it. And I did like it okay, but I didn't like the my peers. I think there was one other guy besides me that actually came in voluntarily because we wanted to. Just the two of us. The rest of the guys were running from something, trying to escape something. Had judges give them the option to come into the army or go to jail. There's a lot of those guys. So it had just a dysfunctional way about it. It was just not a good experience at all. But the only way I could think to get out of it and stay in the army was to ask for SF. I figured SF, they're not going to put up with these people. But the only way to get there is to go to jump school. And I have a clinical fear of heights. So for the longest time, that was just not a possibility because of jump school. I can't do that. But after 2 years, I was ready to do jump school, do whatever it took to get out. As I said it before, I was ready to jump without a parachute. That's what it took.
Yeah, it's funny, reading your book and you talk about your fear of heights. I'm the same way. Um, I will not stand on a step ladder to save my life, which amuses my wife to no end because she's like, how could somebody who jumped out of airplanes for all those years and actually did mountain climbing? Because I was on a mountain team and used to go rock climbing and did all that stuff, will not step on a step ladder. But I still, to this day, have a fear of heights. But jumping didn't bother me. I actually enjoyed being a jump master. But
Yeah,
being that close to the ground on a ladder just scares the heck out of me.
yeah. There's an altitude limit to everybody's fear of height. Seems like like that low heights is what really bothers them.
Yep.
High heights, whatever. But I agree with you about the jump master part. Jump master, um, I rather enjoyed that a little bit because mainly I was swamped with tasks. I had all the tasks to perform, and that kept me from just sitting in my chair worrying about the jump. And it did help. But when I was just a regular jumper, not a jump master, but just in the stick, jumping wasn't any easier for the jump master school. It's still, and Halo wasn't any better. It was the same thing.
Well, there's a
Now I
great
had,
picture in your book of you haloing. You look pretty comfortable out there.
that was in school. That was in the school at Marana,
Yeah.
and I had a rucksack on that jump, and um, there's just good weather, good air to fall through, and of course I was always trying to put on my best composure for the instructor.
Yeah.
Didn't want him getting to the ground and reporting he's not comfortable up there.
Yeah. You know, and going back to your early SF days, you were in the 7th Special Forces group, as I was, but you were there at a not so good time in 7th group and moved over to first. Explain to our listeners a little bit about that time frame.
Yeah, I did go to. I went to 7th group, and I went to. I guess it was just a unanimously hated company, run by a really nasty sergeant major. And I remember reporting into the battalion headquarters before I even went to the company, and there was some schmuck standing outside on the porch waiting for his name to be called, and I was waiting with him and wouldn't say anything, and he asked me where I was going to, and I told him I'm going to B1, B21, I think it was B21, and he goes, "Oh God, you're going to Billy Lee's plantation." that was the nickname for it.
Yes, the
Billy Lee's
plantation. We all remember that.
Yeah, and everybody was unhappy in that company, including me. But I ended up getting pushed up to S3 Air at the battalion after just like a year. So I got to be away from Billy Lee, unless he came there to battalion headquarters for some reason. Yeah, he was a pretty mean guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a happy man.
But moving over to first group was a good experience for you.
Yeah, it really was. And I tried hard getting there. I tried using, my language, because Chinese was one of the first group's languages, and I finally did get it. Got transferred over there, and it was, they didn't even have chains of command there when I was there. I was a E5, and I was a team sergeant for a scuba team. Wasn't qualified or anything. It's just you're the team sergeant for this team, 155. And I had like 4 or 5 guys, and when the teams did fill up and we got some more senior people, then the priority was to get us all through dive school, and I went. I had to repeat it because I failed the first time around. So I repeated it, was qualified, and it was an excellent team, a damn good team to the man. And it was a real pleasure to be there. And it seems fair. I had to put up with those years in the plantation. Then I got to come over to an elite dive team with some real great players, and we were in great shape and not bad at diving either.
Yeah, and then you spent some time at the dive school down in Key West, and that's one of the toughest schools in the Army. How did you love working down there?
I asked for that trip. Worked real hard to get that billet there in Key West. Finally got it, and it was great duty. I mean, outside of the SMU, it was fantastic duty. We just were. It just so happened that when I was getting there, they were slicing up the curriculum and the amount of courses that they were going to do, and especially with the first group opening up, they needed to put in extra classes. So we were really just like meeting ourselves, coming and going, working hard all the time. And when I was there as a student, I noticed that it was pretty cushy, and there's a lot of older guys, and there was like one person leading PT in the morning, the only guy that could. But by the time I got it, then there was a lot of time off. There's an insanely large amount of time off for those guys. Then when I got there, that was over, and I didn't mind it. I didn't mind working. and that's what we did. Did our best day in, day out.
Chuck Studley was one of your fellow instructors over there. Chuck's a
Sure
great
was.
guy. I know that he's always putting up pictures of the the Key West guys from back in the day.
Yeah, it was a real charge having Chuck work there. But I could tell day one that he was a really good guy. The first day he got there, we had a cadre jump from a Sea King helicopter, and he fit right in. Afterwards, washing the parachutes, guys were busting his chops. Already, and they don't really do that unless they like you. So,
yeah,
Chuck, it was great having him there, man. He was good for my morale being there, and we pulled a lot of gags on each other. Had a good time. He was good at the PT. He could get in there and he could lead that, and he was real good on the platform. Excellent on the platform. I really appreciated having him there.
And it was during this time that you decided to try out for the Special Mission Unit, and how you talk about this in your book, and we'll get more into it once we start talking about the book. But how difficult, the preparation. I know you said the first time that you prepared for it, you actually overtrained, and that's a common thing for a lot of guys, whether they're preparing for SMU. What was that like doing it down in Florida, where you're dealing with the heat all the time?
It was, of course, it was tough. I pushed myself really hard because I just didn't know what to expect. And the unit pushed out a training curriculum to all the new candidates, that they have on file. And it's just they call it as a recommendation for how to train up for the unit. And I couldn't keep up with it. I tried doing it for 2 days. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't move fast enough or carry enough weight. And so finally, I just tried not to fret the curriculum paper, got rid of it, and just did on my own, what I thought I should do. Rucked every day, did bike ride every day, did a lot of calisthenics, and got some time in the gym at night. I don't remember ever taking a break, and I ended up, getting blistered feet and some injuries, and that was my condition when I was about to go catch my flight. Is that I had my duffel bags up on my shoulder, walking out to the car, limping, and I just stopped and said, "What are you doing? You can't show up to Key West or show up to SMU selection and assessment with injuries. They're not going to get better because there's no time off, or they're only going to get worse." So I dumped my bags back in my house and made a phone call, and they were pretty they were chill about it, and they were encouraging for a next time. You got to just get yourself right and get out here the next time around. And they fixed me a date, and I started it all over, did the training, got a little smarter about it, and I was able to show up to the airport with no injuries the second time around. And the course itself, it was a matter of, I realized that in the end, it's like, why did I make it if I wasn't the fastest guy? And I decided it was consistency. Like, and there's a time standard there. It's like no one knows what it is, but there's a slowest amount of time that if you can't hit that mark, then you're definitely out of there. But then above that, there's this window in there. If you can keep that steadily day after day, those times, then I think that is that matters in who they select. I think they want to select the guys that are consistent. And I consistently got lost at least once every day. The first leg out, I got lost. It took me about 3 hours to get right again. But after that, everything was pretty smooth. It was just a matter of, putting the terrain behind me. And I ended up making it through first time around.
That's
And that was good.
That's a lot of walking in the mountains up there.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is.
How many map sheets did you have?
I was thinking about this. How many were there? It was between 5 and 7 map sheets. And we used our map sheets more than just once, and even on the long walk, we, had to do some detours up in the mountains that forced us to pull out a previous map sheet, to reacquire our bearings. But I remember putting them all together, all the distances together, and they equaled the size of West Virginia, from north to south.
That's amazing. And then after you made, go ahead.
I was wanting to say that several people in the support role in the unit wanted to try out, and they did, and particularly more officers than enlisted guys. And when one of the officers at a checkpoint, he referred to the maps as something that only the cadre referred to them as. Like we tell them, pull out map sheet 7, but to the cadre, that's probably like I6.
Mm-hmm.
And he used that term, and the cadre was in an uproar. They're saying, "Man, the guy, he spilled the beans on himself that he was familiar with the map sheets." And they wanted to get rid of him, throw him out. And my outlook on it was, you could have given me the map sheets before I showed up, just given them to me, and I can just open them up and go, what's what? What is this? Where would I be starting? Where would I be going? First, second, third? It's doesn't matter. What matters is you have to put the terrain behind you. That's what matters. And no prior familiarity with the map sheets is going to help you do that. Because, man, you can't memorize a whole map sheet. Well, I suppose you can,
No.
But wow. So, but just somewhere in all those squiggly lines is a trek I have to make. And I don't even know if it's a north-south or east-west. He ended up failing himself, and we found out that, or the psych would talk to him, and he told us about him a little bit. He said, "Yeah, he processes a map sheet a little different than the guys that make it process." And like he asked me, so what do you see when you look at a map sheet? And I say, I see a picture. I see a picture of ground. I see high places and low places, and everything between. I can see water, rivers. It's like flying over a piece of terrain in an airplane. And then when you ask this guy that failed what he saw when he opened a map sheet, he saw a math problem. He saw numbers. He didn't see the picture. He saw numbers. So every movement he made was like a mathematical equation. So you could bet he was out there, with what do they call it, that Ranger tether with the beads on it to pace count.
Yeah.
He probably had one of those, and he dead reckoned his way through as far as he could. But it's just, you can do some dead reckoning. It's possible. I may have done a little bit, but probably not. I was out there with a compass, but no protractor, no dead reckoning done. Just, it was all terrain association. Just look at the picture compare it to the terrain. And, nope, there's the same one. There's the same pictures, and start making my way through it.
Yeah, in your book, you talk about, going through the selection process. And I remember seeing a picture years ago of the boots that you took through there. They took a
Yeah,
beating.
they did. They did. I still got them.
You still have those
For
boots?
oh yeah, absolutely do. Um, but before I started my train up back at Key West, I drove north to Homestead Air Force Base because they have clothing sales there, and I bought 2 pairs of the most basic leather boots. No frills, no zipper, no fancy tread to them. And I bought 2 pairs of them, marked them A and B, and I just I traded those boots out every day. I used B yesterday, I use A today, and I think if I only had 1 pair of boots when I showed up there, they couldn't have handled the beating. So it was good to have the spare, and even in selection, I swapped my spare with my primary set of boots every day. Swapped them out, and they both look about the same. But that 1 pair is the one that I marched the 40-miler in, so it's got a little more beating than the other. And I got rid of the other pair, just did. Um, yeah, but those are definitely my 40-miler boots.
That's awesome. So, you traveled all over the world with the special mission unit. I mean, you meet and you write about a ton of just intriguing characters in the unit. And is there any one spot I know that stands out, either good or bad, amongst all the places you traveled?
Uh, Probably Morocco was, and because I did it alone. Went through six cities in Morocco with like no money, just like $5 a day, and yeah, it was. I mean, they gave me enough dirham. That's the currency there to get me like say a $5 room for rent at night. Then you had a few dollars after that to get something to eat or drink because it was hard to get good water there. And I just traveled from city to city using different medium. Like I used a bus to get to one place. I used trains uh, more often. And at one point, I lost uh, I lost the opportunity to catch a train, and I ended up taking a camel with some people, friends of a guy in a bar that I met, and we marched up there with camels. It's kind of fun. It was. I was just
Yeah, I've
afraid
spent
of.
some time in Morocco.
That's right. You did some filming there, and have some
Yeah,
really
I did
good stories.
I was a security guy for a film there, and it's an intriguing place. I mean, I was up in Rabat for most of the time, but we
I was
had an
there as
old
well.
air base that used to be an American air base in Kenitra, and then we went south down into Marrakesh just to check it all out. And of course, we had to go. I mean, I had to go to Casablanca as an old movie fan and go to Rick's place. So
Yeah,
Morocco's a
I
pretty
was there in
intriguing
Castle.
place.
And Fes was I think the
Yeah.
fifth city that I was at. Yeah, it was pretty cool, pretty intriguing, but the not having anything and very little money kind of ruined it. uh, ruined a little bit of the mystique. But I think, yeah,
So
Morocco,
let's
I
talk.
saw the,
Go ahead.
I was going to say Morocco is, I saw some of the most pathetic people, poor and crippled, and that sort of thing that I had never seen before other than movies. I actually saw a guy that had no legs and he pushed himself in a little wooden cart with four wheels and two weights in his hand, and that's how he propelled himself. And I said, "Wow, I've never seen it that bad before."
Yeah, it's really different. You're in the Arab world, but there's a lot of Western influence there, unlike a lot of the Middle East. It's very different. I'll just leave it there. But let's talk
And
about your book. I know I've read a couple of these stories because they were published in SOFREP. But did you ever aspire to be a writer?
no, never did.
It was just something that came about. I mean, through stuff you had to write for Special Mission Unit, or
No, I wrote. I wish I remember this. I don't actually. I wrote that story about Matthew Ryerson.
Mhm.
Okay, I remember now. It was I was living here with my daughter, and I wasn't really working at the time, and this opportunity came up, to work human traffic. But then another opportunity came up. It says, "Hey, there's this website, SOFREP," and they says, "Why don't you write a story for SOFREP? They might pay you for it." I said, "Oh, well, okay." So I wrote that, and Jack took me right away, and we came up with the deal. Would write 5 stories a month, and then that went up to 10. Then it went up to 17, and then I got laid off, and Stavros picked me back up, and um, then I left on my own. I just walked out, no letter, nothing. I just said, "Good luck, boys. I'm out of here," and was able to get work with Alex at the Sandboxx. I didn't know I could write. I didn't know, and I was actually even told by someone that I don't like, that didn't write well, that you think you can write well, but you can't, not really. And when you write, you use this voice that's odd, and it just kind of scares people away. So that's how I figured I was at writing. But until I was,
you know, it's funny you say that. I remember being in college and taking courses, and my English professor told me never write for a living because you're terrible. and
why would they even
and
tell somebody that?
yeah, and I never took it to heart because I was just wondering, where he is today, because I've been writing for over a dozen years now, and I still enjoy it. I write my own style. It maybe isn't the most grammatically correct, but people seem to enjoy some of the stuff I write, so I don't worry about the critics.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't worry about the critics. Your stuff, especially the war history stuff, are some of the best papers of yours that I read. I think I kind of try to learn the mechanics of the Battle of Midway, and I watch different documents. And I could never get it straight. Like I could never, if somebody came up and said, "Tell me about the Battle of Midway," A to Z. I couldn't do it. It just wouldn't sink in. But I wrote the paper you wrote, and I finally was able to fully understand it. Like I didn't know it was lasted more than a day. I thought that it was a course of several days. But all that happened. It was just like bam, bam, bam. No one got a nap that day. Yeah, that was
No, it's amazing. I mean, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. But when you go back to that story, I mean, so many things had to break right for the American Navy on that day, and every one of them did. And they were quite fortunate, but the bravery of the guys involved. And I just saw a special I hadn't seen before. There was a dive bomber pilot named Dusty Cleese who actually bombed more than one of the Japanese carriers, and then on his way back, he got jumped by Zeros and shot two of them down, which is just unbelievable. Flying a dive bomber.
So he's probably flying the Dauntless SPD dive bomber.
Yeah.
They're I guess they have a chance against a Zero. Some of the others don't, not really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
but
a
in
great
terms
story.
of your book, I mean, some of the people in there, the characters you talk about, Sergeant Major Colin Rich, he seems like quite the character.
That's Sergeant Major who?
Colin Rich.
Oh yeah. I'm still in touch with him today. Still in touch. He was a hell of a character in the unit. He sure was. He's from New England, Boston.
Yeah,
actually.
I liked how you wrote in the book with his Boston accent.
Yeah, I never know how that turns out to the reader. It's like, well, to me, it sounds like this. Let's see if the reader gets it. So,
well, as somebody from there, when I was reading that, I was cracking up laughing because it sounds like all of us who from there, how we all talk.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a compliment. He got out.
The guy I wanted. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He got out and still lives, I think, in Southern Pines, and him and his wife opened up a pizzeria, Boston style pizza. That's what, and has a new grandbaby. That's what they're doing these days. So he's still horribly afflicted with, his wound. They'll never heal, but he's doing okay. Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about Conan and explain to our readers about him. He's the guy that actually got you into the special mission unit.
Yeah, he is. He's one of the guys. There's like two that the light really came on when they finished their spiel. But it was James Conan Sutter that made the difference. And he showed up at our one of our courses in Key West when I was an instructor, and he didn't talk to me through the whole thing. He maintained the instructor-student relationship, but at the end we have a gathering where we have a couple of beers and cook something and mingle with the graduates. And he pulled me aside, all the way around the other side of the building. He said, "Come here, George." And then he practically ordered me to go try out. Said, you need to go. I said, I can't even keep up their training curriculum. He says, "Don't worry about the training curriculum. Don't worry about anything. Just get over there. It'll all work out." And he was right.
And I take it just from the way you describe him, he must have been a really big man.
He was big. He's a pretty good size. He was buff, and had a kind of a mean face, and you just didn't mess with the James Sutter. Didn't mess with him, and he was just too much for most people. They said they just couldn't keep up with the motivation the guy had, and I think it was a good idea when he went to the unit because with all his motivation and all his ideas, he had resources to entertain all that. Like he thinks he can come up with a different whatever web gear, and he tasked me to come up with some web gear that floated because the SEALs had it, and I did that. But I was the only one that had it. Nobody else wanted it. But yeah, it was a really good thing for him to get to the unit. And then when he left there, retired, he went to work for a contract for the DOE in Las Vegas. And he started calling me up and hounded me. Says, George, I found out you're up for retirement. I need you to come here and work here on my project. And I pushed it back a lot, but finally he said the right thing. And I was going to school for IoT at the time. And I just dumped all that and went to work for him. He's still the same guy there in that contract, and all. They had a bunch of civilians working for him, and that wasn't going over too well. They were constantly hounding HR, that this guy's being mean to me. And I get that. Yeah. He would get a complaint about me from HR. So he says, George, did you tell some guy that you're going to rip his head off and shit down his neck? I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I may have done that. And HR would complain. He'd say, you got to ease back. You got to this, you got to that. You're not on the Little Birds anymore on short final. And I thought, well, of all the people to tell me, to ease back, you got James there. But, in spite of all that, he had people knocking down his door trying to get on his project because he had money, because he was making money on his project. And he ended up with like over 100 employees. They're working for him on his project. And some of us were able to break away from his was a training course for first responders, on rad, nuke, radiation, solving radiation problems, biological problems, and chemical scenarios. And I didn't really much like firemen so much, and policemen and all that, because they were complainers. They complained about everything we made them do. And it was hot, and it was the desert, so that fed into it. But I was able to pull away and do some special mission unit type stuff. I ended up handling all the SEALs that came through to do their shakeout before they went to Afghanistan, and even the Big D came through there and did a deep underground rescue of a Scud Bravo. It was a full Scud Bravo that ran, and they had it tucked way back in this tunnel. It was actually a drift, because it's like a letter. The drift is shaped like a letter U. It's got an entranceway, goes in, bends back, and it has an exit, a different exit. The tunnel just goes in and then it comes out. Just one way in, one way out. So they had it hidden back in the bend of this drift. And we imported some humongous heavy armored doors to block these portals. Stuff from, I don't know from where. One of them came from an AT&T facility that was deep underground. And it was many feet thick and weighed X number of tons. And the guys came in and assaulted that. Their breachers cut those doors. They cut in through those doors and opened the doors, and was able to drive that Scud out.
That's some cool stuff. And that was in the Utah desert or Nevada?
Nevada desert, and the air lifted and airdropped all their vehicles in the desert out there, from 130s and such. So they did a full mission profile, a real airdrop, personnel drop, long distance movement over ground in their vehicles, and then hit the objective. And there were little birds flying all through those mountains, hitting targets, and it was amazing.
I wanted to ask you something. I know we were talking about military history earlier, and I know that while you were in the unit, you guys went to Poland, and I know that from the book you have pictures where you visited Auschwitz.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, even so 60, 50, 60 years after the fact, what was it like visiting that place?
It was a real somber place and a sobering experience. Um, and I think I found myself, and I wondered if others didn't also do this. But just picture myself being there, being one of the victims in different buildings, of the camp, Auschwitz, and then its sister camp, the much larger Birkenau across town. But you see it all in the movies, and you see the real thing and try to imagine what it was like for 5 people to be crammed in this one bed and in freezing cold and expect them to sleep. And the hardships are just untold. It's hard to really explain it all. But it was a great tour. I was glad I was able to do it. And it was a dumb luck that I stumbled across a couple of cars that were organizing themselves to drive out there on a free day that they gave us. And I just jumped right in a car, says, "Hey, I'm going. I'll go with you." And Sam Foster came along as well. Him being a history buff, and it was amazing. Anybody that can get there, it's not going to change. There's and it's funny because Birkenau takes up a lot of land. It's big. I don't know how many acres, but if ever there was a land shortage, I don't know if they'd ever consider like, oh, okay, we'll put up a monument, but we're going to take back the rest of this land. We just need it. And I doubt they would ever do that. It remains untouched.
Yeah, I know that. My dad was in armor in World War II, and he liberated one of those camps. Not as big as Auschwitz or Birkenau, but the pictures he took were pretty horrifying. I guess is the only way to put it. And I know that was one of the things that haunted him. He never talked about the war, the fact. And even after I became SF and I'd come home, we just talk about some of the funny stuff. But one night he opened up about liberating one of those camps and how it just, I mean, guys who had fought all the way across Europe, how it just horrified them to no end. To like, it literally shocked these guys.
I don't doubt it. These photos that your dad took, is that just his own personal photos, or did he ever have them published?
No, because at the time, he said that the order came down. His commander had called in. They found this place, and they said, "Yeah, these places are being found everywhere." And they said, "Every man with a camera go into the camp and take as many rolls of film as you have, because we have to document this, because eventually it's somebody a lot smarter than everyone else said, eventually somebody's going to say that this shit never happened, and we're going to make sure that people remember that it did."
How about that?
And later on, I worked with as a contractor with the Iraqis, and the Iraqis insisted that never happened. The Holocaust didn't happen. It was a myth.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would they think
They
that?
used to argue with me for no end. And they were like, it was all made up. It didn't happen. And I was like, my father had nightmares until he passed away about that. I'm sure it did.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know what their interest is there in saying that it didn't happen. Well, they weren't there for one thing.
Yeah. But I got to ask you about one of your other brothers in the unit. It's a guy I've watched his videos. You know, I'm just intrigued. I would love to meet him someday. Pat McNamara. Can you fill us in a little about Pat?
Pat and I have been friends for over 35 years. He's one of the first people I befriended when I came into SF. And I came to first group. And that was in Washington State. And he was part of that gaggle of people that showed up there, and there was no structure. We just really didn't have. It was not deployable because it wasn't full. We didn't have all the billets full of all the people. I was a team sergeant as E5, and I had like 4 guys on my team, and we were a scuba team, but no one was scuba qualified. We had to do that later once we got organized. But Mac was just, larger than life, jolly guy, as long as you weren't pissing him off. And he drove this Cadillac, this big old Cadillac, with the roof down. And he would steer with his left arm and have his right arm over the seats and speed. He would speed along the road that connected the Fort Lewis with North Fort Lewis. The freeway cut those two in half. And so you'd have to drive across the freeway and then this long stretch to get to the rest of the fort. And Mac would just speed down that thing. And he'd see us rucking or something. And he'd always holler out, Yahoo! Yeah. And he's the same way today as he was back then. Same way. He talks the same way. He's got the same opinions. Works out the same way. He's the real deal, man. He's living life. He's
basic really dude stuff.
Basic dude stuff. Yeah. I wrote that bum. He puts a caveat in there sometimes. Says, "Hey, feel free to write down ideas and send them in." And I filled a whole page full of stuff. I said, "Here's some basic dude stuff for you," and he didn't use a single one of them, which is good because it means he's got enough material. He's almost at 100 too. As basic dude stuff is almost at tape 100. So there's I'm sure the last few are gonna be some whoppers. Probably some really good ones. But he's living life, and he's doing real well. He's totally successful firearms instructor. He's got a lot of demand. I'm really happy for him. We stay in touch.
That's great. I would love to meet him one day because you see a lot of different special ops guys all over the place, and whenever I watch one of his videos or see an interview with him, I'm like, that's a guy I would love to sit down and have a drink with.
Yeah, he'll have a IPA, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's his
so how
choice.
Difficult was it putting all the stories together for the book?
I had I started putting, just getting all the stories that I had and that I could remember, and got a big folder. And I said, they're all there. They're supposed to be there. Just to backstep real quick, I went to selection with Mac as well.
Oh, so really?
Yeah, I was really got the bond. So I got all the stories, and I started, picking which ones are going to make the cut. And I wasn't sure what the number was, like how many chapters am I going to have in this book. They're going to be 1,500 words each, just about. And I ended up with the 20. And decided this will be the 20. And I said, well, I need to add to it. So I wanted to put 2 chapters in the beginning and add 2 more chapters to close it out because it really had no beginning or end. Uh, but about that time, I was working with Greg Coker, and he asked me to ghostwrite his book for him, and it was my fault for getting him going on a book. So I felt obligated to ghostwrite for him, and I wanted to do it as quick as I could because his story is amazing. I wanted it to get out there first, so I just I pushed my own book aside. See, like, yeah, I'll get to that, and I just worked on Greg's book. Sun up, sun down. Just worked on it. He was doing his part. He was definitely shacking up chapters and sending like a couple a day sometimes, maybe more. And I felt like I would be the holdup of his book if I didn't work as hard as he did. So I really pushed myself, and and we got it done. And then when his was done, then I went ahead and picked back up on mine and wrote those 4 chapters in just like 2.5 days, less than that maybe. And I had a product and was able to progress the product based on Greg, because he was one step ahead of me all the time, and that really helped me find a way through to a publisher and printer and all that sort of thing. So he's like my test bed. But he was on the ball more than I was. Like he had his paperbacks done and had them out there months ago, and I don't have mine out yet. I have them. They're in my They're in my garage in crates. But we're working a contract with Amazon to mail those to them and have them move the book from their store.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, to our listeners out there, Brothers of the Cloth by George Hand. This is if you've read George's work on SOFREP and Sandboxx and We Are the Mighty and Business Insider and probably a half dozen other sites, you'll love the book. I affirm. I was a fan. I literally asked you for an autographed copy, which you were kind enough to send to me, and it was a great book. I'm actually reading it again because when we were talking about getting on the podcast, I said, "Oh, I got to read the book all over again." So it was fantastic, but we definitely recommend it to all of our SOFREP listeners and readers out there. Check out George's book. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about the book before we wrap it up and give you back your day?
Well, it's still in the process of getting registered with Amazon, but you can still buy the book by calling my staff and ordering through her, and that's my daughter, who you already know, and actually met this morning. But you can call her up and tell her that you want one of those books, and she'll work it out with you. She'll do the pricing for you, and she works with a bunch of different internet models for handling money, like Cash App is one of them, Zella, another one, PayPal, and Venmo are some of the ones she works out. She'll just get your order, get your payment, and mail your book out to you.
Well, Geo,
and otherwise, I keep what the progress of it on my website, my Facebook site.
Well, Geo, we want to thank you once again. It was great to catch up. Thanks for taking the time to join us today, talking about your book. You can also find George's book on his website, georgehand.com. Be sure to check that out. Thanks, my friend, for taking the time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. You're a consummate professional. I really enjoyed this. You made my day.
It was my pleasure, and as always, as you sign off on all your chapters of your book, I signed off with the same thing. When I did a review of your book, a written review, by Almighty God and with honor, read Geo's book.
Thanks, Steve. Cheers.
All right. Before we leave, if you want to get SOFREP on your phone, download our free mobile app and get easy access to our articles, podcasts, and gear reviews, all perfectly formatted to your device. Please subscribe to SOFREP.com to get access to our library of all our ebooks and exclusive team room forums and content available on all your Apple and Android devices. We want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today, and especially our good friend Geo. Geo, thanks again for joining us. All the best to you and your daughter. Thank you once again for ironing out our details today. We really appreciate it.
All the best all the time, Steve.